Eden Hazard. Is he returning to Chelsea? Is Don Hazard making his return? The Prince of Stamford Bridge? We'll have to wait and see. But before we do get into it, make sure you smash the like button, subscribe, hit the bell notification and comment down below your thoughts and opinions on this massive major news story of Eden Hazard. Roman Abramovich and Florentino Perez, the president of Real Madrid, are in talks and discussions about a potential return for Eden Hazard himself. We'll be delving into all the details, all the latest news reports, and also I'll be topping it off with my thoughts and personal opinions on a potential Hazard return. But without further ado, let's get straight into this video. And starting off, of course, is Eden Hazard. Now, according to various Spanish publications, more notably El Nacional, Chelsea are reportedly in early informal talks with Real Madrid to re-sign Hazard, and owner Roman Abramovich is increasingly convinced that the 30-year-old will be one of the best in the world again if he returns to Stamford Bridge. Hazard is fed up in Madrid and he sees a return to Chelsea as a real option going forward. Now, can I just quickly mention that people are going to be bringing up injuries, and I'll be delving into my thoughts and opinions later on in this video, but if Thomas Tuchel can revive Ross Barkley, imagine what he can do with Eden Hazard in his hands, with Thomas Tuchel at the helm. But we'll be speaking about that later on. And as we delve further into the report, Chelsea, of course, as we know, in early and informal talks, Roman is increasingly convinced that Belgium will be one of the best players in the world if he returns to Stamford Bridge. And Eden Hazard actually sees the option to return to Chelsea, and Real Madrid will not say no to selling the Belgium. Now, there's some context involved, of course, and it does favour Chelsea, and any Chelsea fans that would like a return for Eden Hazard is Kylian Mbappe. We need to evaluate Hazard's situation at Madrid. Now, let's look at their current forwards at Real Madrid. Who have Real Madrid got in terms of who can play in that front three? They play the four-at-the-back formations. Therefore, they've got the three in the final third, left wing, right wing and striker. They've got Karim Benzema, striker. They've got Luka Jovic. They've already got two positions there. Eden Hazard is not a natural striker. Yes, he can play in a false nine position, but Real Madrid do not utilise or deploy with a false nine, so therefore it's completely redundant. There's no point essentially evaluating that position, and Eden Hazard wasn't bought to be a striker. Now the winger options. Vinicius Jr. Now, Vinicius Jr. has been on a crazy development ever since Hazard has arrived. He's really broken out onto the scene. He was signed for a phenomenal fee, an astronomical fee back from the Brazilian League a couple of seasons ago when Chelsea had a transfer ban. And he's really broken into the first team. He's flourished under Carlo Ancelotti. He's been racking up the goals and assists. He's had an efficient output. He's really technical and skillful. They've got Vinicius Jr. They've got Gareth Bale. Of course, Gareth Bale, they are also looking to offload. They've also got Isco, who can play there. They've now got Eden Hazard. And with the addition of Kylian Mbappe, where does that leave Eden Hazard's position? Now, again, you've got other players like Lucas Perez on top of that as well. So there's so many players that can play in that position that Eden Hazard's game time will be limited, naturally. If Kylian Mbappe is signed, Kylian Mbappe is a guaranteed starter. Karim Benzema is a guaranteed starter. Kylian Mbappe's best position is left wing because he can cut on his right foot, he can utilise his pace, acceleration, etc. And his link up and chemistry with Karim Benzema is going to be simply world class. So where is Hazard going to play? Is he going to play on the right hand side where his game time is going to be reduced, and it is actually not his best position because he is right footed. So again, the passing angles are going to be limited even though he is decent with his left foot. Then what happens to Vinicius Jr.? If you sign Kylian Mbappe and keep Hazard and Bale, that's going to halt Vinicius Jr.'s development. Are you really going to do that when he has superstar potential? That's another question. I don't see that happening as a possibility. So Real Madrid will definitely be open to selling Eden Hazard. They're not going to stop in his way because he hasn't performed for them. He's on astronomical wages. He's on around £400,000 a week. And if he did sign with Chelsea, he would have to be on a reduced wage. He'd have to cut down because Chelsea are not going to pay a guy who's 30 years old, who hasn't lit up the world in 2 seasons, the same wages on £400,000 a week. It's simply not going to happen. He may be on the wages that he was at Chelsea on £200,000 a week. And mind you, before he left for Madrid, we did offer the same wages in terms of £400,000 a week. But that's in the past now. For me, Madrid would be open to selling him. And if anything, Madrid would like to sell him because, again, he's on extortionate wages. He's not performing. He's not living up to expectations. They want to sign Kylian Mbappe, so they need to free up the wages because Mbappe is going to be on, stupid substantial wages. They need to be offloading players like your Eden Hazards who've simply not performed, who's injury prone, who's 30 years old. Now, you guys are going to come on here who are anti-Hazard in terms of re-signing and say, well, Kemal, there's no point. He's injury prone. He hasn't been at his best for 2 seasons. He's going to be on massive wages. Why bring him back? It's in the past now, let's move on. Now, I hear that. It's a completely valid point, and there may be part of a sentimental, section of me that believes that we want Hazard back because it's all about sentiment. He's my favourite ever player. He's for me the greatest player in Chelsea in terms of technical ability, and of course, I grew up watching Hazard, so of course there is that sentiment part, that sentiment section, but looking at it from an objective point of view, I still believe Hazard would be a perfect signing, and this is where I'm going to be breaking down my points and explain to you guys as to why Hazard is the perfect signing for Chelsea for what we need at the moment. Now, my major concern with this, of course, is his injury issues, his injury problems, his athleticism. Now, here's the thing, and this is why I said Tuchel is going to play a massive role here. Tuchel has revived the likes of Ruben Loftus-Cheek, who is injury prone himself, who had a career-ending injury away in America in that pre-season friendly, and he's somehow been revived this season. Ross Barkley, this guy was going to be loaned out to West Brom, had him not collapsed in the last seconds. He's come back and he essentially won us the game against Southampton, pinging passes left, right and centre. This guy revived Ross Barkley and Ruben Loftus-Cheek. Who's to say he can't revive top 3 players in the world, Eden Hazard? He certainly can. Yes, he has some injury concerns, but if we fix his diet, if we change his training, and listen, Real Madrid are notoriously known to injure players a lot. Their strategies, their regime is completely broken. They haven't got the best physios and doctors. Chelsea do have a much better physio team, better doctors. We're going to give Hazard what we want. We're going to basically give him the conditions that he needs to be able to thrive, given the conditions where he's not going to be as injury prone. He's going to come back to a league. He's going to come back to a city where he's familiar with, where he's comfortable with, where he's happy with, where the expectations are a bit lower for him as well. For me, I think he'll be injured a lot less. Will he be injured more? Yes, of course, because he's been injured a lot in the past 2 seasons, and of course he's aging, but that's besides the point. He will be injured a lot less, in my personal opinion. And we got a lot more attacking players now. We got a lot more support for Eden Hazard. Secondly, why do I want Eden Hazard? Apart from the sentiment side, apart from the fact that I believe we can revive him, it's his natural ability, it's his talent, it's his creativity, it's everything that Eden Hazard embodies. It's the creativity that we're lacking. I keep stressing after review after review after review, talking point after talking point after talking point. Chelsea have a major creativity crisis. We haven't got creative players. Do we have poachers? Yes. Do we have goal scorers? Yes. Do we have midfielders who can pass? Yes. Do we have progressive players? Yes. Do we have dribblers? Yes. Do we have any creative players? No. Or if we do, it's a lack of them, and it's a limited amount of them. Eden Hazard instantly brings a spark of creativity that we desperately require. In terms of his dribbling, in terms of his movement, unlocking low blocks, in terms of danger, drawing men in, drawing men out, passing, ability, drive. His goal scoring ability, he's a clinical forward on top of that as well. He's simply world class in so many attributes, in so many areas. He would elevate our team to new levels. We would definitely, if we sign Eden Hazard, we automatically compete for a Premier League. A fit, form, in-form Eden Hazard, we are Premier League favourites in my personal opinion, ahead of City and Liverpool. That's how good Eden Hazard, and in combination with the squad that we already currently have. For me, Eden Hazard is that guy. Yes, it will be a risk, but how much would he cost? 40, 50 million pounds? You know, it's not a major risk. And on top of that, we could potentially negotiate a loan with an option to buy or an obligation to buy. So the risk is reduced, especially if it's a loan. Do what Griezmann did do what Atletico did with Griezmann. It was a loan with an option to buy. You could potentially negotiate something like that, and I'm sure Eden Hazard will be open to coming back. A city that he loves, he's adored by the fans, a club that he loves, a club where he's a legend at, where he can win more trophies at Chelsea with a world-class coach and manager. For me, it's perfect. It's the perfect reunion. I think we need to make this happen. And Roman and Perez, according to Spanish publications reports, are in talks and discussions for a potential Eden Hazard return. But let's wait and see what happens in regards to that one. If you did enjoy this video, to smash the like button, subscribe, hit the bell notification, and I'll see all of you guys for my next video. Peace.